On this episode, Dad sews a cute little skirt for his 7-year-old daughter.
Dad sews! Dad sews! Dad sews! Dad sews! Dad sews! Dad sews! This is how it goes with Dad sews!
Hey guys, thank you for joining me for the latest episode of Dad Sews, where I'm going to be sewing a very simple skirt for a little girl. Now, I originally saw this at junctionfabric.com on their YouTube page, so I am giving it a try. So check out their tutorial as well, and we always look for cool tutorials that we can try on Dad Sews and see if they really are as easy as people say they are. All right, now this is a very simple skirt. It's a straight cut skirt, and it just has elastic at the waist. Now I'm going to do a couple things differently than Junction Fabric did because I want this skirt to be adjustable as my daughter grows, because fabric is expensive, especially very cool fabric. Now the fabric I have is some really cool criminal fabric. Now what does it mean criminal? Well, it's got criminals on it. My daughter wants to be, as she says, a police when she grows up. And so I wanted to get her this fabric. It's got all of the criminals that she's gonna catch. She's not really into wearing skirts. She likes wearing Captain America shirts and jeans and Hulk shirts and Hulk gloves and side guns if she can do it. But I know that she'll wear a skirt if it's a fabric that she really likes. And I know she's gonna love this fabric. All right, let's get into it. You're gonna cut your fabric self-ridge to self-ridge, very simple, as long as you want the skirt to be. Then you are going to fold over a 1/2 inch at the top and the bottom, and then another inch. So you're gonna wanna have 3 inches clearance when you cut the length of the fabric, however long you want the skirt to be. Now, I cut my fabric initially and thought it was cut straight, and then when I looked at it, because of the pattern that's on the fabric, it was wrong. One side looked great, the other side looked terrible. So again, just cut it self-ridge to self-ridge as long as you want, plus 3 inches, 1/2 inch, another inch, fold it. Now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna sew the bottom seam. Okay, now the first step is not to sew the bottom of the skirt like I just told you. Boy, I almost had a fail. No, it's to sew the ends of the skirt at the self-ridges. Now, I have already pressed my 1/2 inch and then inch seam. I'm just gonna unfold them and put the fabric good side to good side so the wrong sides are out, and we're gonna sew a seam along that self-ridge, okay? All right, now, if you've got a pattern, make sure you line up that pattern as well as you can, all right? That's gonna make everything look tip-top. All right, let's move to the sewing machine. All right, you're gonna want to give yourself plenty of seam allowance with your self-ridge, all right? And like I said, make sure, as good as you can, you're lining up that pattern. All right, here we go. All right, this doesn't have to be anything fancy because people really aren't gonna see it. This is just gonna be a quick seam to get your skirt put together. All right, our trusty Fisker shears here. Give that a cut and a trim. Boop. My son will clean that up for me later. Thank you in advance to Carlin. Okay, now you're gonna fold flat your skirt with the seam up, and you're gonna press it open. That's right, spread the seam open that you just sewed and just give it a quick press. Now, if you did like me and didn't really do a good job lining up your pattern on the first time, now is when you can take your trusty Fisker shears and you can go ahead and say, I'm gonna fix that. So I'm just gonna get rid of this extra fabric that I have. Now that you've pressed open your seam, you want to refold where you did your 1/2 inch and then your inch. Make sure you press it really good, and then we're gonna sew the bottom of the skirt. I've got everything repressed on the bottom seam. I went ahead and took the front of my machine off, that little storage area, so we can just loop it around the whole front of the machine. All right, you want to make sure you back stitch. And then just sew along the edge. And make sure that you're catching that 1/2 inch. Okay, you want to make sure that 1/2 inch is done, because if not, it's just going to come unfolded. You don't want to sew in the middle of that. You want to make sure you catch that top edge. All right, I'm just going to sew the rest of this all the way around, and we'll be right back. Now we're going to do the same thing we did for the bottom of the skirt around the top of the skirt. Now make sure that you don't go in too deep, because this is where you're going to run your elastic band. This is the casing for your band. So make sure you keep a nice tight seam allowance right on that edge, so you have plenty of room to run your elastic. Okay, now everyone online recommends you use a safety pin to attach your elastic to. I don't have a safety pin, so I'm going to be using a paper clip, but it'll work just as good. And we're going to sew over the connecting edges, so it's not really going to matter when there's a hole in it. All right, so I'm going to pop that in there, and then we're going to take this and we're going to run it through our fabric where we left that hole. A better sewing instructor would have probably told you how long to cut that elastic before the last step. But you're not sewing it as you watch it the first time, so it's fine. And this is Dad Sews, where we sometimes fail. And I'm telling you this so you don't fail. I cut my elastic to 24 inches stretched. My daughter has a 22-inch waist, and I went ahead and cut it an extra couple inches because of this step. And I also stretched it out because I wanted to make sure it was a little snug on her very, very trim waist. Now I'm going to sew the two elastic pieces together here. I marked which side were the front side of each side of the elastic so that I made sure it didn't get twisted when I was running it around the casing. Now when you are running it through the casing, you're going to have a hard time getting it through that seam. I had a really hard time popping it through that seam, and I went ahead and got a butter knife to help me push my way through. All right, so we'll just sew a couple stitches back and forth on this, and I'm going to go ahead and use my zigzag pattern, okay? And then we're just going to do a couple back and forths. That's all we really need. It's just a little piece of elastic. All right. Now, the next step normally would be to sew over this hole where you put your elastic. I'm not going to do that. Why? Because I want this to be able to grow with my daughter. Like I said at the beginning, fabric is expensive, and this could stretch another 2 inches if I wanted it to. And I can do that by leaving the hole and then going ahead and pulling out the elastic, just cutting it and running another piece of elastic. So what am I going to do with the hole so that it doesn't fray? Well, I'm just going to take it where that 1/2 inch is folded over. I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew a little bit of a zigzag stitch right over it on the back where nobody is ever going to see it. All right, I'm going to make sure that I don't catch my elastic, and that is going to seal off that hole, so I don't have to worry about it fraying. All right, and it's also going to remind me where exactly the hole is so that I can run my elastic through the next time. Now, if she grows another size, I can go ahead and pop out the elastic, cut it, run through another one. All right, well, this was a pretty easy project. I used a nice little red thread that also is in my pattern. I think it looks pretty cool. Probably would have done it in black if I had realized, hey, dummy, there's lines on the fabric design, so you probably want to keep with the lines that are black with the black thread, but I don't think my daughter's going to mind, and actually, I think it looks pretty dang cute. All right, well, thank you for watching this episode of Dad Sews, but before you click stop on the video, Before you click onto another one of our great sewing tutorials or fails, make sure you do two things. One, click subscribe. That way you're notified anytime we have a new video on Dad Sews. And stay tuned so you can see pictures of my daughter in her new favorite skirt.
I like this. Criminals, you're under arrest.
Love you.
I love you too.
This production is brought to you by the Plaid Dad Blog Podcast Network. For more information, visit plaiddadblog.com.